The Galactic Council chamber shimmered like a cathedral built by stars. Columns of translucent crystal arched overhead, refracting light into a kaleidoscope that spilled across rows of delegates. Species from 100 worlds filled the amphitheater, their voices a low current of whispers until silence rolled in at the Chancellor's command. Chancellor Vareth rose on the central dais, tall and angular, his scaled features glinting under the chamber lights. His voice carried with perfect clarity, every syllable sharp as glass. "Let it be entered into record," he declared, "that the Terran Confederation refuses to commit its forces to the Trillion border dispute. Humanity, it seems, fears war." The words landed like a blade across the chamber. Murmurs surged from the tiers, some amused, some contemptuous. At the far end of the council floor, Ambassador Elias Kale stood. His hands tightened on the rail before him, the tendons in his jaw flexing. For a heartbeat he said nothing, letting the accusation hang in the air. He could feel hundreds of alien eyes fix on him, curious, mocking, expectant. Fear war? The thought burned through him like acid. Kale drew a long, steadying breath. He was 44, scarred by memory more than flesh, a veteran turned diplomat. Behind his composed posture churned the weight of Earth's history, cities reduced to ash, the silence of fields where soldiers never rose again, the hollow echo of promises carved on stone memorials. Humanity had never feared war. Humanity had feared losing everything worth defending. Vareth's thin lips curved into something between a smile and a sneer. "Perhaps it is understandable. Your species is young, fragile, burdened by the chaos of your own brief past. But courage," he said, spreading his arms toward the assembly, "courage is the mark of civilization. Humanity lacks it." The chamber rippled with reaction. A Felyari delegate, fur sleek and eyes like molten silver, let out a purr of derision. "They hesitate even when called to aid others. Cowardice disguised as pragmatism." From the opposite tier, a towering branch chortled, his tusks glinting. "Perhaps we overestimated them. Soft-bodied creatures, brittle bones, short lives. Their fear is natural." Kale's grip on the rail tightened until his knuckles blanched. His chest felt like a furnace barely contained by flesh and bone. He remembered standing in trenches of blackened soil, smoke searing his lungs, while artillery thundered overhead. He remembered the faces of soldiers younger than himself, faces that had never known peace, and the silence after their last breaths. Cowards? He almost laughed. But Kale had been chosen as a diplomat precisely because he knew when not to let rage consume him. The council chamber was not a battlefield of guns and ships. It was a battlefield of words. He straightened, his voice steady though it burned in his throat. "Chancellor Vareth. Esteemed delegates. Humanity does not refuse because we fear war. We refuse because we understand it." The words silenced a few murmurs, but Vareth raised a clawed hand, cutting him short. "Understand it?" The Chancellor's tone dripped with condescension. "You mistake scars for wisdom, Ambassador. Experience is not the same as enlightenment. Violence is the last resort of those who have failed at reason." Laughter rippled through the chamber, harsh clicks, guttural growls, hisses of amusement. Kale's eyes swept the tiers. He saw smirks, saw the way some delegates looked at him as if he were little more than a child protesting scolding. Yet, among them, he also caught hesitation. A narrow-eyed zealot scribbled something on his slate, a flicker of unease in his gaze. Kale drew another breath, the air tasting of ozone and pride. "Hold, Elias. Hold." His reply came measured, words chosen like blades honed for precision. "Humanity does not call war a teacher of wisdom. We call it tragedy. We have no illusions about what it costs. We know it demands the lives of the innocent long before it touches the guilty. That is why we do not rush to feed others into its fire." The chamber quieted slightly, a ripple of discomfort spreading at his candor. But Vareth's cold smile widened. "And yet," the Chancellor said, "you abstain from duty. The Council asks for sacrifice in the name of stability. You answer with refusal. If every species shirked responsibility as you do, there would be no order, no peace." Another delegate, the lithe Avori with scales like sapphire glass, leaned forward. Perhaps humanity should be reconsidered for council membership altogether. Their reluctance signals weakness, and weakness breeds disorder. Kale's breath hissed between his teeth. He could feel his pulse hammering in his temples. He thought of the colonies, thin strips of farmland carved into alien soil, children growing beneath unfamiliar suns. If humanity squandered its strength in some distant border war, those colonies would be abandoned, undefended, erased. Yet these alien voices dared call it cowardice. His control thinned, a crack forming in the dam of his restraint. He let go of the rail and stepped forward, boots ringing against the polished floor. His voice dropped, no longer calm, but sharp as a knife. You speak of sacrifice as though humanity has never bled. A hush rippled outward. Kale's gaze locked with Varitha's. You think we refuse because we are afraid? You think we know nothing of courage? His voice rose steady but hard. We have buried generations beneath the soil of our homeworld. We have fought wars not for conquest, but because the alternative was extinction. Do not lecture us about sacrifice. The chamber had gone utterly still. Even the Brantha's smirk faltered. Kale leaned forward over the podium, eyes blazing. His voice dropped into a low, resonant growl. You want to know what humanity fears? The silence was absolute. Kale's hands trembled, not from doubt, but from the force of words straining to break free. He felt the weight of centuries press against his chest, waiting to be unleashed. The council's laughter had died, replaced by a stillness as sharp as a blade drawn in darkness. He let the silence linger, heavy and suffocating, before the storm within him prepared to break. Kale's voice cut through the silence, steady, each word a weight slamming into the chamber's still air. Humanity does not fear war. He let the phrase settle, eyes sweeping across the tiers. Faces shifted, skepticism, unease, curiosity. What we fear, he continued, is watching our children starve because their fathers died on some forgotten field. We fear empty cradles, homes burned to ash, the silence where laughter used to be. That is what war steals from us, not glory, not courage, but the living future. No one laughed now. Kale's chest rose with slow, deliberate breaths. He thought of the images that never left him, the ruins of Berlin after the orbital siege, the oceans of smoke that had drowned New Kyoto, the rows of graves stretching until they blurred with the horizon. You think our refusal means we lack courage? His gaze locked with the Branth delegate, tusks gleaming in the dim light. Courage is not measured in how eagerly one throws lives away. Courage is standing back up after your world has been shattered, and doing it again, and again, until standing is all you know. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Some leaned forward, listening. Others shifted uncomfortably, as though wishing they could silence him. Chancellor Varitha's voice slid across the chamber, smooth and cold. You paint tragedy as triumph. But you do not deny it, Ambassador. You are dangerous. Every word from your lips is a hymn to violence. What happens when such a species turns its hunger outward? Kale stepped forward, the heat in his chest igniting fully now. His voice thundered, no longer tempered. We are dangerous because we know war does not end in hymns. It ends in silence. And we have lived in that silence more times than I can count. He pointed toward the high spires arching above them, crystalline and flawless. Your empires grew fat behind treaties, protected by fleets you rarely had to use. Ours clawed its way out of famine, plague, bombardment. We have been broken by our own hands more than once, and yet we endured. The chamber crackled with unease. Delegates whispered to one another the words, endured, and survived, repeating in languages Kale did not understand but felt in his bones. An Avori delegate rose, scales catching the light. And you call this virtue? Survival without restraint? A beast lives the same way. Bleed, heal, repeat. Is that your argument, that humanity is little more than a beast that refuses to die? Kale's reply was sharp as a blade. If so, then we are beasts who carry our dead on our backs, beasts who build monuments on their graves, beasts who remember. We are dangerous not because we love war, but because we endure it without surrender. The Alvori faltered, sinking back into her seat. Cale turned slowly, addressing them all. His voice lowered, drawing them closer. Do you know what happens to us when war comes? We send our children. We send them because there is no one else. They fight, and they die, and those who remain take their place. Generation after generation. Until there is nothing left, or until we win. A hush hung over the amphitheater. The words struck deeper than bluster, because they were not abstract, they were lived. The Feliari delegate hissed, his purr gone. Madness. No species should accept such endless loss. Cale's eyes hardened. No species should, but we had no choice. Do you see? You think restraint is a sign of fear. It is not. It is knowing that when war comes, we will pay in blood far deeper than you could imagine, and still stand. Veritha's talons clicked against the dais, measured, sharp. You call this strength. I call it savagery. A civilization that measures itself in graves is one step from extinction. Cale's temper broke its final tether. His voice rolled like thunder, filling every crevice of the hall. Extinction is exactly what we faced. Again and again. And still we are here. We bled, we burned, we buried entire nations, and still we rose. Do you think that makes us weak? No. It makes us unyielding. His hand slammed against the podium, the crack echoing like a gunshot. You mock us for refusing this war because you think we shrink from sacrifice. We refuse because we know exactly what it costs. Because we have already paid it, more times than you can comprehend. The council chamber quivered with the force of his words. Some leaned back, eyes wide. Others stared at him as though seeing humanity for the first time, not as naive newcomers, but as something old, scarred, and relentless. Cale's voice dropped, quieter now, but each word struck like iron. If war comes again, we will fight. We will bleed. We will bury our dead until the ground can hold no more. And then we will rise again. Can any of you say the same? The silence that followed was unlike before, heavier, darker, filled with the weight of truth. Delegates who had smirked now averted their eyes. Even the Brantha's tusked grin had vanished. Veritha's expression hardened, though the Chancellor did not answer. His claws tapped against the dais in a rhythm that betrayed unease. Cale scanned the chamber one last time, his gaze fierce, unflinching. You said humanity fears war? You are wrong. We fear nothing but losing those we love. And for them, we will endure anything. The chamber held its breath. For the first time since Cale had entered the council, not a single delegate spoke. Not one dared. The silence itself was a kind of respect, and a kind of fear. The silence clung to the chamber like a living thing. No delegate moved. No voice dared break the stillness left in the wake of Cale's words. Even the glow from the crystalline spires seemed dimmer, refracted through the weight of his defiance. Chancellor Varus stood rigid on the dais, scales glimmering faintly, his expression locked in cold calculation. At last, his voice rose, deliberate and sharp. You threaten us. Cale's reply was immediate, unflinching. No, Chancellor. I promise you. Humanity does not seek war. But if war finds us, then pray it does not last long, because humanity never stops. The phrase echoed across the amphitheater. Delegates shifted uneasily, some leaning back, others whispering to aides. The Branth who had mocked him earlier no longer smiled. His tusks ground together, uncertain. From the second tier, the Feliari delegate spoke again, her permuted. Your words, they are not boasts. They are warnings. Cale inclined his head slightly. They are truths. We do not claim to be the strongest, nor the most advanced. But we are the most relentless. That is what you must understand. A hush followed, until a deep, resonant voice rolled from the far tier. A Vorn, massive and plated with natural armor, rose. His kind were known for stoic neutrality, rarely speaking in council debates. Yet now his heavy gaze rested on Varith. Perhaps the humans are not as the Chancellor describes. Perhaps their endurance is not weakness, but a shield the rest of us may one day need. The chamber stirred with surprise. A chorus of whispers rose, some in agreement, some in protest. Cale felt the momentum shifting, not to victory, but to recognition. Varitha's eyes narrowed, talons scraping against the dais. So you would have us admire savagery? Reward a species that revels in bloodshed? Cale's voice cut across him. No one admires blood. We bury it. We carry it. And we never forget the price. That is why we are careful when we choose where to fight. Because once we begin, we will not stop until the fight is done. For a moment, the Chancellor faltered. The rhythm of his talons against the crystal stilled. The Avori delegate, who had earlier mocked humanity, now rose with careful precision. Her crystalline scales caught the light, but her tone had lost its edge. Perhaps the human's restraint is not cowardice but caution. To provoke them would be unwise. That single phrase rippled outward. Unwise. A subtle shift, no longer contempt, but wary respect. Cale felt the storm in his chest settle into something heavier, steadier. He had spoken the truth. Now it was out of his hands. He straightened, shoulders squared, and let his final words fall like stones into the chamber's silence. Humanity will not be dismissed as fearful. Not today, not ever again. If you call us dangerous, so be it. But remember, dangerous is not the same as weak. The chamber held stillness for a long breath. Then voices rose, not in laughter this time, but in low, urgent debate. Delegates argued in hushed tones, their aides scribbling frantically. Some turned their eyes toward Cale with a new wariness. Others with something approaching respect. Varith remained silent, his cold eyes fixed on Cale, calculating, unsettled. The Chancellor's voice, when it finally came, was tight and measured. This session is adjourned. The great spires dimmed, signaling the close of debate. Delegates rose, their movements hurried, some casting furtive glances toward the human podium as they departed. Cale stood alone, his palms flat against the polished surface before him. His pulse still hammered, his throat raw from the force of his words. For a moment, the weight of everything he had unleashed threatened to crush him. Then he drew a breath and let it out slowly. A low voice spoke from behind. It belonged to the Vorn delegate, who had lingered while others filed out. Ambassador. Today, you revealed something many here did not wish to see. They may fear you now. That is not a failing. Sometimes fear is the root of respect. Cale studied the armored giant for a long moment before nodding. As long as they never mistake us for cowards again. The Vorn inclined his head once, then turned and left, his massive form fading into the procession of departing delegates. Cale remained until the chamber emptied. His reflection stared back at him from the polished floor, tired eyes, a jaw set too tightly, a man both diplomat and soldier. He had not come here to inspire fear. He had come to protect humanity's place. Yet perhaps the two were not so different. He whispered, voice meant only for himself. They'll remember. That's enough. From the highest gallery, hidden in shadow, a pair of alien eyes watched him depart. The aide leaned toward their master, whispering softly. The Chancellor said they fear war. But I see it now. The master's reply was quiet, thoughtful. No. It is we who fear them. Cale stepped out of the chamber, the council's debates fading behind him. For the first time since humanity had joined this grand alliance, the galaxy no longer saw them as children. Not fragile. Not fearful. But dangerous. And unyielding.